All right, we're going to talk about OpenSSF, and I'm glad that I got to follow Krob and Eddie because they talked about OpenSSF, and we're going to talk about a project that's incubating at the Continuous Delivery Foundation, Ortelius. Many of you here know me, but I'm always happy to introduce myself. I'm Tracy Ragan, CEO of a little company called DeployHub that's been incubating Ortelius now for about 4 years. We had our MVP released in December, so we're pretty excited about working on adoption. I had another company before DeployHub called OpenMake Software, where we generated build control files, and we've been delivering build audit reports through that tool since 1995. So I've been pretty excited all my life about auditing builds. I know that may sound boring to many, but in this room it should sound normal. I'm on the governing board of the Open Source Security Foundation, and I want to thank anybody in here who voted to put me back on the board. I do enjoy serving. And I'm also on the board of the Continuous Delivery Foundation's Technology Oversight Committee. So what is Ortelius? So Abraham Ortelius, in 1570, created a world atlas. And he did that by bringing many cartographers together. Sounds like open source, right? And he did sort of the least common denominator to determine what the world looked like. I thought he was a great example of open source, and I swear he looks like an alien. So we used an alien as a logo. So Ortelius does, for the most part, it's an evidence store. It sits on top of the DevOps pipeline, and it collects data, and what I call configuration data for everything that's not source code, key value pairs, what deployment scripts you're using, your repos, your SBOMs, your deployment endpoints. And it collects vulnerabilities. It synchronizes every 10 minutes for detecting what we call post-deployment vulnerabilities. Most companies in here, if you're a big company, you are managing your post-deployment vulnerabilities, but some companies do not. And we serve them. So most important to this conversation is Ortelius uses a software bill of material, and we synchronize information from OSV Dev to continuously report on vulnerabilities. Because we know the endpoint for each package that's running in a live environment, we can do that mapping. We decided at the point in time that OpenSSF Scorecard came along that we would like to understand the OSS Scorecard values of the open source packages that Ortelius consumes. So we added OpenSSF Scorecard, because as you'll see, we do a lot of data aggregation to present the data. So right now, you can go find any of your OpenSSF Scorecard values by using this URL scheme. Which is fabulous because you need to be able to see it. So, for example, we can expose Ortelius's. We're at a 7.5. Not sure about the code review and the branch protection. I was going to ask about that, but there is our value. So we have a 7.5 up there. So if anybody's looking at using our project, you can see our score. But it's not as easy to see OS packages. So why is a dashboard needed? It's needed because of who's seeing the data. We service companies who are looking at component level data aggregated up to an application level. So as we all know, especially in decoupled architectures, every container has an SBOM. There's actually SBOMs everywhere. The SBOMs are exploding across our decoupled architecture. So what makes sense? How do you see the data? How do you make it actionable? So the evidence store is basically a dashboard of this aggregated data up to different levels. And I'm going to talk about how we aggregate the data and what that looks like. So we take data from hundreds of OSS packages based on what a particular component consumes. A component could be an AI agent. It could be a container. It could even be an LLM if you wanted it to be. A component is absolutely anything that may have the results of an SBOM. So from that, we version it. So every time that component gets pushed through the CI/CD pipeline, and I'm a DevOps person, I'm not a security person, I'm a DevOps person who likes adding security to the workflows. Every time that gets pushed through the CI/CD pipeline, we're going to capture that information and we version it. So our evidence store is a version control tool for configuration data, including SBOMs. So what that allows us to do is to capture, for every version that's released, all of the scorecard value for that component. So for this component, MS comp item CRUD, that's the OSS scorecard for that particular microservice that's part of Ortelius. Now, it goes farther than that. It also says we need to look at the component's SBOM, and for every single package that we consume, what's the scorecard value? Now, I was playing on this last night, and I should have taken another screen print, because now there are some other packages that have a better value than 0. But you know, we wanted to know how compliant the OSS packages are that we're consuming. And it's been a while, it's taken a while for OpenSSF Scorecard to take hold. And I want to tell you all that from a person who's been, in software and running small companies for a very long time, we might talk about OSSF scorecard, baseline scorecard internally, but it takes a while for that information to trickle down, so be patient. And I'm beginning to see OS packages have scores. So that's pretty exciting, actually, because there's hundreds of them, hundreds of packages that you include. Now we take it to the next level. So we have a component's SBOM, we have a component scorecard. What we do is we aggregate that in the catalog to a logical application. And a logical application is a collection of components that your Helm chart might deploy as a single software solution going out to an end user. Now this gives the application team a view of two things. The scorecard for their component that they're consuming, because an application could be 50 components. So they have a view of their components score, and they have an aggregated view of the package scores as well. So we're aggregating data up the chain. So other stuff that allows us to do, it allows us to go and look for example, I did a search on iDNA, and to see exactly where that might be deployed through our environment for Ortelius. And those were the components that were consuming it, and where those packages were being deployed from, and their build IDs. So it gives us some interesting insights into where you're using open source packages, the scorecard value of those open source packages, and allows it to be seen from a component level or an aggregated logical application level. And we do track the threat, the attack surface or the blast radius. I do a lot of work with TechStrong TV, and anytime somebody says blast radius, we're all supposed to drink our coffee, raise the cup, blast radius. We talk about it a lot, but what is it? A blast radius shows the impact a single open source package could have on deployed components throughout your environment, your live systems. Now, we do monitor live systems, but remember, we're not sitting in a live system. We're gathering the information, adding it to our catalog, so we have a digital twin. For every single release that you have running, you could have two different versions of a component, of a microservice running out there, and they could have two different scores for OpenSSF Scorecard. And we could add to this a baseline data probe, so when you get there, we'll add that. So I had 10 minutes. I didn't want to go over because I'm standing in front of the next break. But please, any questions that we'd love to have, and more discussion on baseline.